Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate it. And you can find me at InfernoFox Gaming on YouTube, and we've also got a podcast, the Inferno Cast, with me and my cast and crew, both here on YouTube as well as Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, and more. I've been a video game fan and I'm gonna age myself here, my friend, for like over 35 years. So I'm an old dog. I'm an old one, but yeah. Yes, I saw that. I had a lot of fun reading your various replies that you had. It was great. I mean, come on, it clearly is a yam, right? Now that's kind of a twofer. My first memory as a gamer was when I was like 1 or 2 years old when my parents had the ColecoVision and they had Antarctic Adventure. And, like, I remember I don't remember so much playing it, but I remember seeing it and having, like, these vague memories, and it apparently got ported to the NES, and playing it on an emulator, like, 15 years after that, I'm like, oh my god, I remember this as, like, a little fox, you know? I'm like, "Wow." And so, that was really, like, my first memory, but the game, though, that, of course, hooked me
Okay.
was the day we got our NES. I think it was like May of '87, and it was the original Super Mario Brothers. And watching my two older brothers playing it and getting to 1-4, and like they were like what was it, 5 and 7 years old, and they were still able to get to that far in like the first night. And I'm like, that wow, this is the graphics on this, and the gameplay, 60 frames per second, man, this is high
S-
tech stuff. I love it.
Super Mario Brothers was a very special experience. And I love that you talked just how special that was for people who their past experience was arcade games or ColecoVision. Super Mario Brothers was a genuine game changer. So I just want to interrupt the story. Also, thank you, chat. I greatly appreciate. Yeah, guess who's drunk, stupid ass forgot to add the sound in for me. Yeah, me again. So I'm glad you can hear me now. But the good news is I was just making introductions, and what's important is InfernoFox here. So you haven't missed anything. You haven't missed any of my knock 'em dead commentary yet. I promise you. So that being said, we're going to definitely touch back on Mario because one of the reasons I like your content. We're going to get into some real meat of things here. I'm hoping is because you dive into what I like to call ludology. Are you familiar with what ludology is?
Uh, uh, not as such, no. If you'd enlighten me.
It is the study of games and how they're played, the rules that come to define those games, and the societies and cultures that form around them. Ludology. And you dive into some of your content, in particular your podcast. You dive fairly deep into that. Like you're looking a lot like I am, which is what makes this game tick, what makes this game so successful. And I do like that about your content. You have a Mega Man series that is just phenomenal, and I'm slowly kind of going through some of your older stuff. And guys, I highly recommend it. Like I don't often see that as much as I would like, and Inferno Fox here dives in pretty deep. It's pretty nice to see. So
Well, thank you so much.
Mario Brothers was one, and it was for me too, by the way. So that was the first kind of pinnacle experience you want to throw out there. What was your other main experience that made you a gamer? Because you said you had a twofer.
Yeah, it was probably Final Fantasy One, and
Oh
it's
goodness.
not on my videos where you can see the ugly mug here. There's always a reason why I feature games that are up here, and I have Super Mario RPG and Final Fantasy up here for a reason, and it definitely Final Fantasy One was the first RPG that I really remember playing and digging into when it came out in the States. I believe in 1990. We almost got it like almost immediately after it came out because I remember we just moved into like our main 2 or 3 bedroom house, and that's when we like picked it up or something like that. And like that, it was funny because I always watched my older brother play the game because Final Fantasy, the original NES one, only had the one save slot, so it was mostly like watching either of my brothers playing it versus really like me tucking in. Although I'd be lucky if my brothers would be like, okay, go ahead and grind some levels out while I'm hanging out with my friends, and I'm like, yeah, little brother duty, I love it. So that's really what got me into the second part of it, and that's where my love of RPGs has really kind of come from.
Yeah, you got a much earlier start than I did. I played the first Final Fantasy, but it wasn't until way later that I actually appreciated it for what it was. Really good game. Really good game. An underrated game, I will argue, in the series. Like probably the most underrated.
And
Um,
a very glitchy game. A
uh-huh.
lot of spells not
Yes.
working, certain mechanics.
Oh, 100%. So I honestly, we could probably have a fucking show just with those two games, if I'm being honest, because you're
Right?
talking about two games that largely established their respective genres on consoles. You have the platformer and you have Final Fantasy. Now, one can argue, and I would argue that in the grand scheme of things, like the grand motherfucking daddy of RPGs is going to be a series like Ultima. But in terms of the console and JRPGs in particular, I don't think there is a better founding father candidate. Maybe Dragon Quest, but Final Fantasy. I remember Final Fantasy to me being the first epic, genuinely epic experience I ever had on a console. Like
That's
and that's not to say that Zelda wasn't epic because that's the other one that comes to mind. But I'm talking in terms of just the grand scope and the bonkers storyline that game throws at you. Final
yeah,
Fantasy literally
especially
left
the
no
the
stone unturned.
yeah, and like the time traveling shenanigans and
Yes.
everything with that. Like,
So
I'm
we
7 years old. How am I supposed to understand any of that?
so we've got so we want to do some guest shout outs. So first and foremost, we got Rush Dog. Welcome to the stream, Rush. We're gonna show his quick comment. So we're gonna admonish Zoo here for a second. For your information, I can hear Fox, but I can't hear Zeus. That's bright and early in the stream. Then Victoria shows up and says, I cannot hear Zoo either.
No.
Rush Dog says, I can hear Zoo now. Victoria then says, same. And then Feral Inferno shows up in time to not see my eternal and weekly shame of not adding the audio. So, Feral, what's going on, buddy? How's it going? Probably a future guest right there as well.
Yeah,
At some point.
Farrell's awesome.
Yeah, at some point, probably going to happen. So, Final Fantasy 1, I guess we'll start there since that's what we were on. So, um, you know, did you ever get the strategy guide with the game? I think they all came with it.
So I remember it was an actual issue of Nintendo Power,
Oh,
and
okay, yeah.
so we had it, and it was one of those things where like you lived and breathed those old classic strategy guides, because I have no idea how me and my brother would have beaten this game without it. And among a purge of quote unquote clutter that I looked at it at the time, I ended up dismissing that and a whole bunch of like old strategy guides back like I think 15 years ago. And of course, now I'm looking at it and I'm like, oh, how could I get rid of something like that? And I ended up getting a reprint of it from a vendor at Etsy, just because I'm like, oh man, I gotta get this back. So yeah, definitely remember that strategy guide.
And what's everybody drinking? Rush, thanks again for reminding me. I swear to God, I wouldn't even be able to get my fucking audio working if it wasn't for Rush. So tonight, I'm going a little bit light. I am just having, so for the Liquored Up Lonely stream, I bought some Franzia, which is boxed wine. Now, why the fuck did I do that to myself? Well, because we're living the theme of the stream. The stream was being liquored up and lonely. And what better way to bring in a lonely night than a box of red Franzia wine and an Impossible Whopper? So that's what that's about. But I still had some of that wine, and so I needed to finish it off. So I am drinking gutter trash tonight. But what are you drinking, Fox?
I am drinking straight up vodka. No, I'm a loser. I just water. I'm just a water drinker.
So what kind of just water? Okay, gotcha. So you're in good company though. That's OJ drank water when he showed up. So I always joke that for our non-drinkers, we always have Kool-Aid at the bar. So we always have Kool-Aid. Sadly it's tropical punch Kool-Aid. It's not the Island Twist mango berry Kool-Aid since they fucking discontinued that. I'm so bitter still.
I don't normally drink a lot of that stuff, but like I remember the biggest thing is the high C Ecto Cooler. That was
Oh
mine.
gosh, yes, I see Ecto Cooler is fantastic.
Oh,
Speaking of which, did you see the Capri Sun crossover with Nintendo?
I don't think I have. No.
Capri Sun is doing a crossover right now with like Nintendo games, and so they've got like
Hmm.
Nintendo themed boxes. If you remember Capri Sun, with you had like the kids like
Ooh.
turning it into like the T1000s and shit, like on the commercials.
Yeah,
That was
I had a cheat. I googled it and I'm like, oh, I think on one of the Discord servers a picture of this was shared.
yeah,
I was wrong. I have seen it.
yeah, that's good
That's kind
stuff.
of cool.
And then Feral Inferno is drinking milk with Reese's Puffs. That sounds delicious. Sounds better than boxed Franzia. I'll tell you that much.
No.
So, so people who haven't played Final Fantasy One, I would encourage you all to give it a shot. Definitely give it a shot, especially now with the pixel remasters. Now, I got to tell you, I don't appreciate some of the things the pixel remaster did with this game because I'm kind of a purist. Like everybody considers the fact that you swing and you whiff if you don't target specific monsters to be a bug. No, that wasn't a bug. That was a specific design choice designed to make that game harder. So, what I would tell you, spoiled bunch of bitches, is pick your shots. Pick your fucking shots. But not an option on the Pixel remasters. So, what you would need to do is you should still pick your shots, but you won't have to worry about that. But my advice to you would be the worst part of the game is the Earth Cave. Get through the Earth Cave, and I promise you will finish that game. But I always remember chapter 3. That was like the lowest part of the game to me. Like just wanting to give up on that part. The monsters get ridiculous. They all know how to fucking stone you or like turn you into like stone, like Medusa's gaze and shit. And there isn't an item shop in the town because that particular town was destroyed. So if you can get through,
See, for me, Sorry, Zoo. Go ahead.
Yeah, if you can get through that chapter 3, it gets a lot funner after that.
See, for me, I think the worst chapter in the game is the Marsh Cave, and when you have to do the whole to get the crown, to get the what is it, the eyeball, to get the herb, to waken the prince. I feel like that's the worst part,
Oh
because
yeah, it's not
even
good.
when even when you get to Earth Cave accessible, you can at least say, all right, I'm not doing this, and you can go to the Crescent, what is it, the Crescent Village, and you can like pick up all of the silver equipment and power up your knight,
No
and
shit.
like and grind and fight those peds. I think the centipede things for like 3,200 experience points, and like super level up your guys so you can make the Earth Cave a breeze. At least that's what I used to do.
Next time I go through that on NES, I'm going to take that advice. That's phenomenal. I never knew.
Yeah,
I
just
never thought of that.
make sure you got a black mage that can do fur 2 or ice 2 to take out those frickin' peds, because if you're under leveled and you do go try earning around the Crescent Village thing, and it's like you just got to get to the village and then do a battle. Maybe you just get through one battle, go to the inn, and rinse and repeat until you get your level up.
Gotcha. Okay. Now the other game is Mario Brothers, and I've been thinking a lot about Mario Brothers, and the reason for that is I just got done playing Super Mario Wonder, and ever since I finished it, I'm not going to say it's a bad game because it's full of shit. It's not, but I've been thinking a lot about what made Mario so special and why it is that we can't quite reach those Super Mario Brothers 3, those Super Mario World plateau anymore on the 2D Mario games. And I noticed you have a video, and I can't wait to watch it because I want to pick your brain on this as well. But you got a video that like what makes a good 2D Mario game. And I again, we could probably do a whole show on this because I probably talked more about Super Mario Brothers than any other person on the fucking internet. I swear to God, about exactly what makes this game great. It's the literary nonsense premise of the Mushroom Kingdom. I think the Mushroom Kingdom is extraordinarily important in the appeal of Mario. The Mushroom Kingdom itself and its surrounding locales. It's part of the reason why, with Wonder, I loved the Flower Kingdom. I thought the Flower Kingdom felt like an actual place. It had actual. It was grounded in like its own rules. Bowser felt dangerous, in terms of how he felt thematically. And then you play the game, and it's piss easy, and everything is slow. And one of the things I talk about is I want to point people out to a bullet bill. I want people to go look up the footage of a bullet bill in Mario World or Super Mario Brothers 3 or even Super Mario Brothers 1. Go look up the bullet bill and then go look up a bullet bill in New Super Mario Brothers or Mario Wonder. And I promise you, you will notice a difference in speed, a marked difference. Like those bullet bills will catch you. They will catch you mid jump, and there's nothing you can do about it. In Mario, in the early Mario games, they were fast. They were a threat. Now it seems like they just putter across the screen. They take their fucking time strolling across that screen now. But that's one of the things. Aside from the ease of difficulty, that's kind of the thing that I would peg it at. And before anybody says, "Well, have you played the special stages zoo?" That's what OJ always says. Yeah, I did, but I shouldn't have to wait till the end of the fucking game to get some kind of teeth. I should. But what do you think? What's your thoughts on Wonder and on what makes a good Mario game?
So I agree with you insofar as like the ease or easy level
Oh
of the game.
God.
One of the biggest guardrails with the new series and Super Mario Brothers Wonder is the midair jump when you hit the RL button and you do that small little like stutter flip in midair to help to ease your drop. And I noticed that I often use and abuse and abuse it again in the new and Super Mario Brothers series. And then you add to the fact the badges. As soon as there was like this midair spin jump, it essentially became a double jump Super Mario Brothers Wonder. Once I got that, it was like the game was done. From then on out, from beginning to end, it was easy cheesy. There was little challenge until the very last of the special stages. Not all the special stages.
Just a
The
few.
very last special stage was the hardest.
The
But
end of the Goomba one where you're jumping on bubbles was maddening. And then
yes.
that jumping stage, that jump stage.
Yeah, because it's like all it is like it's at that timing. Like you just got to get the timing right. But it's kind of like you get into like that false jump and like it's like that same feeling you get when you're about to fall asleep and you jerk and you fall off the bed, except you didn't fall off the bed. That's what that feeling is on that jumping thing. Because you think you got nope, that's not it, and you got to go back and get the timing right again.
So the other thing I'll say in regards to the modern Mario versus, and this problem actually started in World. It's one of the reasons why I'm a little harsher on World than I am on 3. Is in the first Mario game, you couldn't even go back. You couldn't even go backwards on the screen. And Mario was always moving forward because you weren't just having a leisurely stroll through the Mushroom Kingdom. You were there for a mission. Now, I would argue that probably took it too far. And so in future games, whether it's Mario Brothers 2 or Mario Brothers 3, you could also move back and forth, right? But notice that you could only go forward. You could not go back and farm levels for lives, for coins, for power-ups. You could not go back in those games. It was an adventure with you constantly moving forward. Bowser felt genuinely menacing, had an army with a navy, an air force, a tank brigade battalion. But you're always having to move forward. And the moment you could replay levels, and I know that World relied on this, as does Wonder and the new Super games to some extent, because that's how you unlock different worlds. But the moment they allowed you to go back, because it's just gamer logic, half of Ludology, and that's why I mentioned Ludology, is when you make rules, when you craft rules for a game world, you have to also kind of save the player from themselves, if you know what I'm saying. Now, a lot of people will counter and say, well, you don't have to do that. But it's like, yes, I do. Because once I know it's there, it's an exploit. And that's gamer logic. That's games theory. Is you will use an exploit if you know it's there. And so I feel like that ever since they've allowed you to go back and play stages, that's one of those missing ingredients that, and I guess it appears like it's an advantage or something that's a boost to the player, but it's not, especially as short as Mario games can be. Like, no, there's no need for it. Just let me replay the fucking game. It's not a problem, especially with save features and shit now. Let me play through the game and don't let me go back and farm lives. Not that you need to in Wonder, but if it was a little bit harder, and if you couldn't go back with the same craziness you can go back with modern Mario, I feel like the game would probably, I mean, a lot of players would accuse it of losing something, but I don't think it would. I think that's a big part of why Mario 3 was such a phenomenon.
My counter to that is secret exits,
Well,
and
and
that's
that's why
probably
they
one
did
of
it. That's why they did it. And I
yep.
get it. I get it, but I don't know if we, again, I would point to the declining sales on every one. I don't necessarily know if the secret, if the juice was worth the squeeze, if you know what I mean. You know, we had
Yeah, I mean, oh,
yeah,
go ahead. I'm sorry.
yeah, every Mario, every 2D Mario has declined, and literally Super Mario World with those all those secret exits, yeah, it lost to fucking Sonic, a game where you couldn't go back. It got absolutely bodied by Sonic the Hedgehog.
Yeah, and I wonder what is that the over under worldwide, or are we just looking at US on that? Just curious.
Worldwide, yeah, worldwide it's so like 23 million versus 20 million. So yeah, which
That's
is insane as a newcomer.
and
Like
that's still pretty 20 million is
20 million
still
is
pretty
good.
decent.
20 million is good, but Mario World lost the market to Sega Genesis on that one. It wasn't until Donkey Kong Country later on that they were actually able to recover. Sega held that generation for over half. It was only at like that tail end, thanks to Donkey Kong Country of all games, where they got that back. So again, there's more wrong with Mario World than just see. I think the secret exits were actually genuinely cool. They were a cool element, but I'm trying to figure out where that decline started, and not that Mario World was an easy game, but it was certainly easier than 3. Certainly easier than 3. And I think that lack of teeth and where that began, being able to go, there's even a special fucking area, if I remember right, in Mario World, where you could literally go and always get a Yoshi, and like if once you unlock that secret exit, you have instant access to a cape, a fireball, and a Yoshi. And it's like, oh, that's that. Also, it didn't help that Bowser felt less dangerous. Like Bowser was in a clown car, and Bowser was in a Las Vegas casino for his final boss instead of like being, I don't know, in hell, like this dark, brooding world. I don't know. It felt like a decline in many ways to me. And keep in mind, I'm not saying they're bad games, guys. The 2D Mario game is still going to be better than just about everything else out there. But yeah,
Yeah, we're basically arguing the difference between a New York strip steak and filet mignon at this point.
Absolutely. Yeah, 2D Mario. I will stack up even a mediocre 2D Mario game up against anything, and I can tell you that because I just played New Super Mario Brothers U, and it's still a blast.
It's funny. Like, what would be your definition as a game? Like, what is your specific mediocre 2D Mario game? Like your main line. What do you think is the most mediocre?
Yeah,
one.
I'll give you an example of a bad game, and then I'll give you an example of a mediocre game. Because believe it or not, there is one game that I consider to be a bad 2D Mario game, and it's actually Mario: The Lost Levels. I consider that to be a bad game. Yeah, and the reason for that is like not the All-Stars version, because the All-Stars version actually fixed one of the things that made it playable, but on the original NES, you couldn't even save your game.
Oh my gosh, I remember that. I remember insofar as the first time I played it was on the Wii's virtual console when they put it on there, and yeah, like you could save state, but that's kind of cheating, you know.
Right, but yeah, in the original NES, you could not save. It literally rendered that game. It was literally just a less fair, wasn't very balanced difficulty wise. It introduced some interesting elements like the giant springs and the wind, which would have really fit in with a Mario game. But and they utilized some of that to some degree in Mario Brothers 3. But as it stood, it was literally the very definition of a very phoned in shit sequel to me that just took everything that was great about the first game and just completely missed the point of it. Oh, if we just make it super unfair and challenging, that'll do it. No, it didn't. There's a reason why
and I think
it didn't even sell well in Japan, and there was a reason for that.
And I think Farrell and I touched upon the genus of the why that became a whole thing, and that of course was Miyamoto working on Versus Super Mario Brothers and kind of changing up some of the levels from Super Mario Brothers 1 for it. And he's like, this is fun. I could make a whole game with these changed up levels. And that was the Japanese Super Mario Brothers 2. It's essentially like, it feels like a fanfic by a favorite fan of the Mario series. That's kind of how it feels like. You're not going to get like the whole great details of it unless you know the core of the story, which is in this instance the core of the Super Mario Brothers 1 gameplay.
Yeah, and then of course, to juxtapose it with the real Super Mario Brothers 2, and I'm sorry, I said it, which utilized the Arabian Nights to fantastic degree. Gave us Mario 2 USA for the Feral Inferno. Absolutely, homie. Highlight that comment real quick. Mario 2 USA for the win. Although I'm confused by this Mario 2 USA. There is only Mario Brothers 2. And that is what that game is. And so, why do I say that? So for one, let's give readers a history lesson and see if you can really impress the shit out of me. So you will commonly see, this is where you see that dork with the glasses show up and say, well, actually, that was a Doki Doki Panic reskin. Wrong. Actually, wrong. It was not a Doki Doki Panic was a reskin of a Mario Brothers 2 rejected concept. Did you know that?
And it's funny because what it ended up becoming Super Mario USA, or as we like to call it, Super Mario Brothers 2, ended up being the superior version of the game, because Doki Doki Panic doesn't have a lot of some of the stuff, like the music isn't as good, some of the effects aren't as good. You can run in Super Mario Brothers 2, that's going to be kind of a big thing.
Yes. Oh yeah. So to give everybody credit,
just there, the only thing that I'm going to say that it was missing with Super Mario Brothers 2 that Doki Doki Panic had was saving.
Yes. Now, and
but Super Mario All Stars corrects that.
And that's mainly because North America Nintendo wanted to be cheap out, and they didn't want to give the battery because that was pretty expensive at the time. Not to mention there was a cartridge shortage in 1988 as it was, so parts were very hard to come by in 1988. But I just want to dispose of it. I love to dispose and dispense of the bullshit myth of games like Mario 2 and Zelda 2 were black sheep sequels that nobody liked. You're full of
dude,
shit.
I love Zelda 2.
They're full of shit.
Love
yeah,
Zelda 2.
And by the way, Miyamoto is where this shit comes from. So, hitting him too. He decided to rewrite, his own history and talk about, oh yeah, that wasn't a very well received game. No, it wasn't, motherfucker. It wasn't well received by you. You didn't like it. We loved it. We stood in fucking line. We went across state lines to get those games.
See, I appreciate Miyamoto for everything that he's done, but it's almost like a George Lucas issue where
100%, man.
Is it getting too much bigger for his own, like one individual? And my biggest citation on that is his refusal to allow new characters in the Paper Mario series. Because if I remember right, the last Paper Mario or two didn't really introduce too many like new characters, and it's because he had some sort of issue with the idea of having like new characters in like those Mario RPG type games. And it's like,
he had a pissy fit over the 1,000-Year Door.
Yeah. And like 1,000-Year Door is a freaking masterpiece. I mean, this will be probably always be my favorite Mario RPG series thing, but I'm not dumb enough to argue with anybody who would say Paper Mario 1,000-Year Door is the best Mario RPG, because it probably is.
Well, and I think you just hit the nail on the head. And again, this is speculation. I don't know the man more than I would occasionally trade Q&A as an investor, so I don't know the man that well. But the man has an ego, and I think that's a big part of it. It's the same thing that Sakamoto with Retro Studios and hating their fucking bounty hunter thing. And part of it is, one, these guys genuinely don't understand why their series is popular. I'll take that. I will argue that to the fucking grave. They don't understand their own product. And it's not just them. It's all creative types. Like all creative types, whether it's writers, whether it's video game makers, it is very rare for someone to actually understand what makes their product a success. Richard Garriott, when he was making Ultima, literally said, like, do I honestly know why these games are such a success? No, and eventually I'll stop getting lucky. Like, he's literally joked about that. And he did, by the way. With Ultima 9. He actually did. He's allowed to have an ego. He's the godfather of video games. Yeah, he can have an ego all he wants. I mean, I can't stop him from having the ego. But what I will say is he's damaged a lot of the games that he claims to be a curator of. 100%, Farrell. He's damaged them. And I can give you a million examples of that. A million examples. The aforementioned control over Mario RPG. The fact that he's the actual brain behind the Virtual Boy. It wasn't Gunpei Yokoi. Gunpei Yokoi literally just took the bullet on that. But it was Miyamoto pushing from the software design that literally pushed the Virtual Boy's direction. And all that Gunpei Yokoi was doing was he was designing and developing hardware based on what Miyamoto was demanding. There's an Iwata ass where that's admitted. So he cost us Gunpei Yokoi because Miyamoto was going to take the bullet.
And that freaking hurts. Yokoi was a freaking genius.
Yokoi was a genius equal to Miyamoto.
So much for Nintendo. Wow.
Yeah. So we lost Gunpei Yokoi, and when we lost Gunpei Yokoi, we also lost Metroid. For a long, long fucking time. So that hurt bad. And I'll give you the ultimate idea of this direction. Where's Shigeru Miyamoto been the entire time the Nintendo Switch has been running? Where's he been? What's he been working on? What's he been designing aside from his fucking special thanks in the credits?
The Mario movie.
Completely hands off is the answer.
Because Chris Pratt is so cool.
Yeah. Miyamoto has been hands off this entire generation, and it's been one of the Switch's best.
And how many copies of Super Mario Brothers Wonder have sold in 2 or 3 months? 12 million. Yeah, I think
Yeah,
that's
keeping in
where we're
mind,
at.
he tried to tell them we don't like the Elephant Mario. He tried to come in and say, "Get that out of the game." Like he did. Like again, he was too busy to crush it. He was too busy to up in the tea table like he likes to do to everybody. But he did give feedback, which was ignored, and now that's one of the best selling pieces of merchandise in Nintendo. You got to let you. So the thing is yeah, he can be the godfather of video games. But at a certain point, the godfather of video games has to step back and let the new, fresh ideas and younger creative talent take flight. He's
Yep.
got to stop being such
You
a
got to
mouth.
continue. You got to continue to mentor and then let the next generation go.
Yes.
It's the like it's kind of like the Tom Brady problem where
Yep.
you got the 45-year-old quarterback still at the helm, and it's going to happen. It eventually will happen, though. There will be a losing season, and then maybe another, and then you question, okay, is the aging quarterback kind of missing? Kind of missing the throws. He's kind of missing his beat. Is that kind of what we're doing? And so now we got the that said quarterback retired and commentating games, i.e., helping to produce movies.
It's only after Eiji Aonuma stepped back and took a more hands-off direction that we got one of the greatest Zelda games ever made again. At a time when Zelda was literally on the ropes and about to go down for the count.
And you're talking from Skyward Sword to Breath of the
Yes,
Wild, right?
yes, yeah.
Dude, I was so my top three before Breath of the Wild was Ocarina of Time,
Okay,
Link to the Past,
good.
and then I want to say like Zelda 2 just because of how much of a favorite it was. I knew it
Oh, it's
wasn't
so good. It's so fucking good.
I, I knew it wasn't high in a lot of people's minds, but I love Zelda 2 so much.
Yeah,
And
they should
then
play it. They should fucking play it instead of just listening to fucking game journos fucking crybaby about it who's never played it either. They should play the game.
Breath of the Wild. It was so close to dethroning Ocarina of Time, so darn close. But like for it to be such a close number two, and like Breath of the Wild, probably for me personally, is like a top 10 game. And like I said, guys, I'm freaking old. I've got a lot of games under my belt, and for Breath of the Wild to be a top 10 it's up there with like Final Fantasy 6 and Chrono Trigger in my mind. It's that darn good.
God, you're throwing out some bangers, man. Yeah, Final Fantasy 3, Chrono Trigger, absolutely up there. Ultima 7, The Black Gate, Star Control 2.
Oh, that's a good one. That's a good one.
I'll throw those up in there for the old PC old heads. Yep, we are so old. Yeah, that's right. And it's not to say that there aren't new games that are really good because I'll give you two just from this year and that I think are absolutely close or in that category at Street Fighter 6 and that's Baldur's Gate 3.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Both those games are
I
absolutely in that immortal close to being a top 10, really has to be a top 20 category now.
So I got the physical for Baldur's Gate 3 coming directly from Larian. Because
Yeah.
I'm an idiot and I have to get the physical stuff.
You're not an idiot.
I
You're smart.
I sometimes get digital. I sometimes do. If I have to have the game same day, like the Amazon, like the Metroid Prime remaster. As soon as that was announced, like I remember I was at work or something on a work trip, and like I was watching the Nintendo Direct, and as soon as that was announced, I went back to the hotel room and I bought and downloaded that because I'm like I have to. Like I knew the physical was coming, but like I have to play the Metroid Prime remaster now. But like, yeah, so that's Baldur's Gate 3. I haven't played it because I don't have the physical yet.
Oh, you're in for a
And
treat. You liked Ultima 7, right?
yes, it's been a day and a half since I've played that. But
Yep.
yes,
So you should know. You ought to know that Sven Vink can't shut the fuck up about Ultima 7 and Ultima Seven's trajectory. And so literally everything he did in that game, he said, I want to make a game that allows for the level of interactivity that's in Ultima 7, a game from 1992, but I want to do it in this generation because it hasn't been done since.
And I'm sorry, but like Baldur's Gate 3 is the proof positive that in 2023, 2024, you can release a complete game.
Oh,
I mean,
100%.
yeah,
And here's where the
yeah,
story gets taken to the Twilight Zone, Fox. Sven Vink thinks he failed.
that's the sign of a good developer
That's the sign
because
of a
he's been
great developer. Yes.
because he's pinpointing, here's what I can do better. This, so that maybe if we get a Baldur's Gate 4 or whatever his next
Uh-huh.
project is,
Well,
that's what
and
he
he
can
also
provide.
examined why, and he had a really interesting position on why that is, by the way. So what Sven Vink said is he made an interesting observation on modern gaming. And his observation is that the high processing power and the high graphical fidelity has set gaming back in terms of what they can actually deliver. Hasn't moved us forward, it's set us back. And the reason he says that, and I'll point to two proofs. One is what he talks about Ultima. He said, try to make an HD Ultima 7. Try it. Try to make an Ultima 7 with the current standards for graphics and processing, and the game would literally take you 10 years to make, and it would cost double what Final Fantasy 7 remake cost. And that's if you can get it to work at all.
And kind of that whole 10-year thing is exactly mirroring the comments of the producer or director of the Final Fantasy 7 remake
Yeah, and
trilogy, where
there it
they're
is.
like,
Yes, where we can't do this with 6.
and like, oh, I'm sorry, 6 is, I feel it's my favorite game of all time, but I believe it at least is or should be within the top 5 of Final Fantasy games.
Number 1.
And for him to comment that, oh, it's going to be it'd be 20 years, and I'm like, no, it sure the heck isn't, because kind of like what you were saying, how Sven was saying, like, the world is literally open to you with all the graphics and power, the graphical power, and the sort of fidelity. The problem is the is just, it literally is open, and so like where do you
Yeah.
go? How do you box yourself in? And in a way, that's kind of what has made the Switch successful, because the Switch is very clearly a box. You are boxed in by the limitations of what the Switch can do. But sometimes when I don't know about you, but when I was a kid, sometimes the most fun I'd have is being stuck in my room and making do with the toys that I'd have.
Yep,
And like, boy,
exactly.
I could have a lot of fun with
It's
that.
not only is it important, I feel like it's absolutely vital to the creative process. If you ever looked at a restaurant menu where there's 100 fucking items on it, how hard is it to order?
And one of the rules with that I've learned since like my 20s is, the more menu items that a restaurant has, the crappier quality food that it's
That's right.
going to have,
100%.
because the less, if you go to a restaurant and it just has 5 to 10 things, I bet you those 5 to 10 things are made so darn well and with such great
Uh-huh.
amount of care because it's so practiced.
Mm-hmm. And so what I'm getting at there, absolutely correct. Exactly. So number one, there's the art diminishes over options. Number one. Number two, those exact limitations make you think outside of the box in order to defeat those.
Absolutely.
So a good example, and George Lucas has said as much, and actually George Lucas has shown us as much. Because look at what George Lucas gave us when he was off the leash. And he's flat out said that it's some of the creative limitations he had to think around that gave us The Empire Strikes Back and gave us Star Wars, gave us Return of the Jedi. And then we got perfectly entertaining movies, but nothing nearly. The menu thing that Fox mentioned, yes. So Farrell says, as a former culinary student, I can confirm the menu thing that Fox mentioned. And then Rush Dog says, speaking of modern games not being optimized in Final Fantasy, did you see that the FF7 Rebirth demo was 49 gigabytes? I did not see that. But that
Yep,
makes sense.
I downloaded it and played it. It was 2 hours of gameplay for 49 gigabytes.
So let me let everybody in the chat, let me let you all in on a secret, okay? That demo is not 49 gigabytes. That's 49 gigabytes of completely uncompressed loose files that they refuse to optimize. That's what that is. And you know why they do that? Because it's cheaper and they can fucking get away with it on a PS5. You can't get away with that on a Switch. You cannot get away with that on hardware with
Mhm.
limitations. It's not that the Nintendo Switch can't run a lot of these games. Now, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, I'm gonna be one to bet. Yeah, that's not coming to Switch. You can optimize all fucking day long, and they're not going to, so we're not going to get it. But in most cases, most of the games where they say, "Well, we can't," no, you won't, motherfucker, you won't, because the Nintendo Switch, if you would do your jobs, you could fit a vast majority of gaming experiences on the Nintendo Switch. You would have
The biggest examples, The Witcher 3
yes.
and Doom Eternal.
Mm-hmm. They fit those two games. Now, there were sacrifices. Some would argue there were large sacrifices, but they did it, and they gave you that
Mhm.
experience, and they largely did it through selective sacrifice and optimization. Now,
And it's
most games wouldn't even have to do the selective sacrifice, Fox. They would just have to do the optimization. Most games
yeah,
aren't Witcher 3. Most games aren't Doom Eternal.
and it depends on whether or not the company wants to do it. And when
Yes.
they don't, you get Kingdom Hearts 1, 2, and 3 Cloud
Yep.
Edition. That's what you
Yeah,
get.
you get no sales is what you get, because I didn't buy that shit. You get no sales, and just like Atlas is finding out right now. So you fucking liars, talking about how, well, yeah, we don't know if we could get this on. You fucking lying assholes. That is a remake of a 20-year-old game. You assholes. You absolutely can get
So
that on the Switch. You don't want to because you're holding off for a new system. Just tell the
that's
fucking
it.
truth. Just tell the
Yeah,
fucking truth.
that is exactly my thought on that. I had a predictions video that I released on Sunday, basically saying I wouldn't be surprised if Persona 3 Reload is going to be pretty much a day one. It's going to be a day one Super Switch game, because that's why they're not announcing it for currently, and why it's not for the Switch. It's because it's easier for them to try and just put it on the next Nintendo system, versus like what you're saying, all the effort to try and optimize it and get it
Well, not to
on
mention,
the
if
original
they get it
Switch.
on the new Nintendo system, then the motherfuckers don't have to work as hard. Yep.
Yep.
Here's your 30 gigabytes of loose files. Thanks. Like, yeah, that's what they do. That's what they fucking do, man. It's what they do. Look at Metal Gear Solid. If you look at that Metal Gear Solid collection, that was the straw that broke my fucking back on that, man. Was seeing Metal Gear Solid collection. These are PS2 games. These are a bunch of PS2 games that already are on the Vita, all
Because
physical.
it could go, it could fit on the like a Switch cartridge, but no,
Yeah,
you don't want to pay the money to get it on there.
Konami would have to actually have some game developers do some work. And that's
Yep.
not going to happen because they don't have any fucking in-house game developers. Like, yeah, it's
But they do have Pachinko machines.
oh, of course they do. Of course they do. And you know what? I after seeing that fucking abortion that is Silent Hill Ascension, I kind of wish they would have fucking stayed there. Not gonna lie.
Oh,
You know, there's and I know why. Let me tell you my experience on that. So I was watching Super Eye Patch Wolf play that game, and one of my favorite content creators. And I was watching. We were live. I was in the live stream while he played that game, and we all collectively. It was the part where one of the dumb bitch characters was getting arrested for killing her somebody. I don't even know what the fuck was happening in that game. And in walks a character who's one of like the health service workers. It's with the police officer. And so she's like, "Who did you call?" And the dad or brother or whoever the fuck he is like, "Someone who can help." And in walks a lady with a pink beard in a Silent Hill game and she's like, "Ma'am, you're gonna have to come with me now." And she's like, "What?" I can't. And you have the entire chat and John had the same fucking reaction, which is like, "What the fuck is this in a Silent Hill game?" Like, it looks like she stepped out of the fucking circus, and they designed the clothes silly as shit. And I thought that was an actual character that this team had developed. No. So it turns out if you pay enough money, you can literally insert the side characters into the narrative. You can
ugh.
literally do that. And so what's happening is you have a bunch of trolls. You have a bunch of trolls that are literally making these characters. There's one guy that was like blue in there. And it's just in a game that is a horror psychological trauma. And you have people making these like mutant fucking characters that you would make in a bad character select screen. Like if you ever played like an Elder Scrolls game, you know how you would play with like the settings and just make the most ridiculous looking characters you could?
Yeah.
That's what was happening. That's literally what was happening. Literally.
So,
And
so to me, that feels like a twofer. Obviously it's a Konami money grab because I'm sure you pay money to be
oh
able
yeah, it's like
to do that.
$300 to make your creative character get a bit part in the game. Like it's
And a
crazy
second
expensive.
thing, I'm wondering if Konami keeps trying to chase the creative curtails of a Hideo Kojima by, oh, here's what we can do for an interactive experience. Let's get the player community into the actual vibe, into
Yeah,
the mix.
except the player community fucking hates you and has hated you for a long time. They don't hate
And
Hideo Kojima. They want you to fail, and they're helping you. They're helping you fail right now with that game. With
uh,
like
it, it,
imagine you're in a scene and somebody with like fucking devil horns and blue skin walks in. And he's like the cop that's gonna take you into the state. It's like that's the kind of shit that's happening in that game. Like
kind of totally gets rid of the idea of the immersion of it,
it's
unless
a
you're
fucking psychological horror game.
unless that's part of the whole. They could say, oh well, what if that's the horror part of it? That this pink and blue demon character is part of your psychotropic dream, and it's like, okay, now you're really
Now
reaching
you're
there.
really
I
reaching
think
because I've seen the monster designs of back in the day. Like, yeah, no, this ain't it. No, like, no, it's bullshit. And now I heard the short message might actually be decent.
that was the demo, the free demo, right?
Yeah, it's only
Um,
on PS5, so I haven't had a chance to try it. But
my partner, she's playing that literally right now
what'd you think
as
of
we
it?
speak. She's a little frustrated. It's
Okay,
just like there's a couple parts of it where it's like, okay, I keep getting stuck and dying at this one aspect, and it doesn't really tell me where to go. But like she's because she loves the horror games. It's funny. I am the Nintendo, Mario, Zelda person. My partner is the horror game and the Until Dawn, Resident Evil, Silent
yeah,
Hill kind of thing. And so she's like, I guess it's a little unnerving, but it's just a little frustrating at this point.
right. I like
So
them. I like them all as long as they're good. They have to be good games. I like them all. And that is a piece of shit. So, Minato Mario says, "What's up, flipping the switch? What's going on, Minato? What's going? Thanks for joining in, man. Where I'm gnashing teeth about Konami. It's a usual sticking point of the show. So, Feral Inferno says Sony paid for a timed exclusivity anyway, so Switch wasn't going to happen regardless. I mean, I keep hearing that, but I've never seen any actual evidence of that. Am I willing to believe that Sony gave Atlas a bag of money and it's not just Atlas being weird? Yeah, it could certainly happen. But part of my money, because it turns out that was all bullshit with Persona 5, and it was just Atlas being fucking weird. Um, so and that was all basically but confirmed. It's like, no, we never got any money. We're just being Atlas. That's why we never brought Persona 4 or Persona. That's why we announced that on Xbox first. And didn't even say anything about Sony. That's why we didn't bring those games over for Sony on modern Sony systems, even for 15 fucking years. And it's why we literally didn't put the Persona 5 Royal on Switch literally until near the end of its lifespan, even though it's a JRPG juggernaut. Like it's
that's another top 10 game in my opinion.
which one?
5 Royal.
5 Royal. I'm getting ready to write a review of 5 Royal, so I'm getting ready to give that the zoo treatment.
Let's avoid spoilers because Farrell's playing
Oh yeah, I won't.
5 Royal for
Yeah,
the first
I'm not
time.
going to spoil anything. And actually, that's one of the good things about my reviews is and you can attest to this. I don't spoil anything.
Oh, you don't.
I try to find a way to talk interesting about these games without spoiling shit, and it's hard sometimes. But I try to find a way to do it. Now I do plan to revisit if oh my god if I can ever get through my backlog, I will revisit and I'll do kind of a new game plus where I actually talk in depth about spoilers. And there's some games I'm really itching to do that with, especially like Fata Morgana and with Omori. I really want to get into the meat of Omori, but that's going to be a long time because I'm at like what 440 fucking physical Switch games that I got to get through. So yeah,
You got plenty of content for your channel. Great content too, by the way.
Oh, I appreciate that. I do definitely appreciate that. So Farrell says Sony bragged about it with both remakes. Okay, yeah, and that's possible. I'll look for that when I get off of here, or if Rush Dog, if Rush is still in the chat, Rush, could you fact check that real quick and just let me know that happened? I'm not saying you're lying, Farrell. You're probably right. I I'm real careful with what I hear one way or the other, and I'm real careful with saying when I'm speculating. And it just like with the whole they got a bag of money for Persona 5 and it turned out they were just being Atlas is just full of fucking weirdos, is what it turns out. I would need to see Sony brag about it, but you're probably right. Yeah, if you're willing to say that, I'm willing to bet you're right.
Yeah, it's so bad. Like, dude, I slept on the Persona series myself. 5 was the first of the Persona games that I played, and then after 110 hours and falling in love with Best Girl Makoto, I'm like, oh, this was great. And then Royal comes out. I'm like, oh, guess I have to do it again. Darn. And then that was another 140 hours.
Yeah, I'll tell you what.
So good.
Yeah, Persona 5 is very good. And again, we'll stick with the lack of spoilers. The Kamoshida arc by itself, I feel like they could have done a whole game with the Kamoshida arc. So yeah, it's definitely something there. The Kamoshida arc in Kamoshida. Let me ask you this: is there a better villain anywhere in RPGs than Shigeru Kamoshida? Anywhere? I would stack him against anybody in terms of doing his
Kamoshida
job as a villain.
He's the gym teacher, right? If I'm
Yes.
remembering.
Yeah, he is the first and best villain in the game.
See I'm trying to think of in the same game. I'm trying to think of the bald politician guy. I want to say
he was good.
I always
Shido, and he was good.
Yeah, I still think he's a little bit of a just because of how
how it's tied in.
Yeah.
And I get that. It's just that his threat is so, and I guess I would disagree with that to the extent of he's a good villain for sure. Good final deal there. But he is aside from his connection with Joker, he is such a theoretical threat. Like again, he's a bigger threat to the world, obviously. But I feel like that kind of detracts in a way from him because with Kamoshida, imagine you're in a high school, right? And you've got a gym teacher who is very, very good at what he does. And so because he's so skilled at what he does and he has such pedigree, not only are the teachers ignoring what he's doing, and the parents are fucking ignoring what he's doing, but you are absolutely powerless as a student to do anything about this motherfucker. And he is there, and he is in your life, and it is visceral, and it is every day. And there's
one of the things I have to point out is nearly all of the villains in Persona 5, they are the kind of characters that we all have either heard of or have personal experience with in real life. And I can attest to both Kamoshida and Shido in real life. Like, there are individuals in that I know of that could fit the bill of those two individuals perfectly. So that's why I the only villain that I could think that could even come close to Kamoshida would be Shido. And in doing so, trying to
basically there's two great villains in one fucking game that literally
right.
Like you got
and especially and like the what happens to that villain Kamoshida is also amazing in of itself, and how one of the characters in Joker's party actually steps up and actually takes sort of takes the bull by the horns, both in the palace and both in real life. Like just the character development is just
Yeah.
amazing there.
So quick fact check. So Rush did a quick fact check for us, and he's known to do that for me too, Farrell. He says did a quick fact check, and apparently Sony paid for Xbox exclusion for the FF7 remake. So I'll accept what Farrell says there, because that's essentially, I mean, if you're excluding Xbox, that is who Sony views as competition. So yeah, that's as good. That's as good as being an exclusive in my book. So because they both of them fucking poured everything to PC anyway. So yeah, so I okay, so I will say that yeah. Now here's my question. So the original claim, Rush, was that the Persona 3 Reloaded also got that Sony gave them a bag of money. Is there anything out there that can confirm that, or is that just a gut feeling based on how fucking weird Atlas is?
So Persona 3 Reload is on Xbox and Steam, just throwing that out there.
Gotcha. So it's not about, so yeah, and they don't care about Nintendo. So yeah, for PS3, yeah, I kind of doubted that too. And see, I didn't even know that. So yeah, if it's on Xbox, it kind of settles it, Farrell. They're not going to pay for a bag of money just to keep it off of Nintendo. They're not going to do that. They can give a shit less about Nintendo. They just modern Persona games have been revealed at Xbox events first. Yeah, that was what I was talking about, where their weird asses decided to target the system that has no JRPG user base and put it there first because they're fucking weird Atlas. Now, this is the same company whose parent company, Sega, won't even put a fucking Yakuza game on a Nintendo because a Wii exclusive, Japanese exclusive game didn't sell. Didn't sell well
Yeah,
enough. So
and they're going to claim, oh, the content's too mature for Nintendo. Oh, come on! But the real reason is exactly what you said.
yeah, it's just
Exactly what
Sega
you
and
said, dude.
Atlas are the weirdest fucking company in the world. And it's a reason why that every time they fucking turn around, they're talking about their profit losses or their fucking business losses. Because they're fucking a weird company. That's why. Like
It's so funny because it's like they have so many good bangers right now, and then like yet they're still gonna be laying off people in Sega of America and complain about losses. It's
of
like, okay,
course they
come
are.
on,
Like, yeah,
really?
Sonic Superstars. Let's launch that day and date with Spider-Man 2 and Mario Wonder. Yeah, we're not gonna lose our ass on that at all. Who saw that coming? Yeah, come on, man. Fucking
That is such a it is such a good Sonic game until you run into the bosses. Then when you run into the bosses, the boss battles are a slog. Ugh.
yeah, there's that. So Rush Dog says, check this, guys. Sega literally cited the poor sales of a Japan only Wii U exclusive Yakuza game as proof that Switch owners don't want Yakuza games. That's Sega. That's Sega, folks.
And I'm certain that's just a line, and maybe it goes back to what you and I were talking about. They don't want to take the time to try and fit it or optimize it for the Switch.
Yeah, and the thing is, like, especially with Persona 5 being so late, I argue, like, and that game did gangbusters on the Switch. It did good. It did well.
Yes.
But I will argue that if that game could have come out when Royal actually come out, I'm not saying port it there because it came out before the Switch, the first Persona 5 did. But when you do Royal multi-platform, get fucking Royal on the Switch and watch how that game would have been easy millions and millions and millions throughout its life. If it had had the momentum the entire time Royal was out, it would have. They lost.
Yeah.
They left a ton of money on the table doing it the way they did it.
You're 100% right. Doing a little bit of Dr. Google about Persona 5 sales. Persona 5 itself has sold over 10 million units, but Persona 5 Royal on the Switch on its own, when that released late, like you said, 1.7 million units.
And that's releasing alone with a limited release at the end of the Switch's lifespan with no evergreen sales, which that game would have done evergreen sales, I promise you. That game would have had legs. And so video games are a momentum-based business, right? So the biggest bump you're ever going to get is when your game first comes out. Hence the massive sales of Persona 5 and the middling sales of Royal in comparison across all platforms. Because it's not new anymore. I mean, it's not new anymore. It's enhanced, but it's not new anymore. And there's a lot of people who literally are going to look at that and say, I already fucking played this game. I'm not playing it again. Certainly not paying you another 50, $60 again. So
Or if you're an idiot like me, you double dip, or I guess in my instance, you triple dip, and you get the physical of Persona 5 Royal on the Switch. So
oh yeah, and I will tell you, after playing Persona 5 Royal, I would double dip for that. If I would have had the PS4 to be able to get Persona 5, absolutely would have done that. Yeah, how well would Persona 5, yes, Rush, right here. How well would Persona 5 have done on the Switch if released at the same time Joker came to Smash? Easy fucking money.
dude, I Farrell will tell you that
Easy money.
I am a big time Smash fan, and me and my buddies were in line at the midnight release for Ultimate, and while we were there during the Game Awards, they announced Joker for DLC, and I'm like, who's Joker? Like, that's how bad I am. And then that's what got me into Persona. And now it's like, okay, when I look back at that, I'm like, oh my god, that is a big deal. That's awesome.
Yeah, I knew who he was. I definitely knew who he was, but it was one of those deals where it's like, if they want my money, they'll bring it to Switch. Like I've got a lot of sunk cost on the Switch. I don't even have time to look at another fucking platform. Um, yeah, Keithia says he's one of the ones. He says I double dipped on Persona 5 Royal on Switch and PS5, and then Keithius also said I just got Sonic Superstars today, which is, again, we were just talking about that. I hear really good things about it. He said once you get to the bosses, kind of slows the whole pace of the game down, but outside of that, phenomenal is what
Yeah,
Fox was saying.
agreed.
So yeah,
Totally agree.
100%. So only other thing I can think of that I wanted to touch on here, because I know you got kind of a little bit of an early out. We're approaching at 9. Are you Central Time, or are you Eastern, or what time zone are you?
Central.
Central. Okay, yeah. So I want to be mindful of your stops. So, um, one of the things I definitely want to get at is the Nintendo. Did you see the Nintendo financials? You saw that, right?
Yep.
Okay, and you probably saw me getting a little bit of trouble over that. So I stand by everything I said. Me and OJ had a little bit of a cordial argument before the dipshit started streaming in. To say, "Oh, you moron," and other fun. But OJ had some good points too. But I'll stand by my fact that, like, okay, so here's what I said, guys, and I stand by that. So I have been a proponent that we're going to get a Switch 2 or a next generation Nintendo system in 2025. I've said this for years. And I stood by it until very, very recently, because unlike unlike the Nintendo Primes and RGT 85s of the world, no hate, love both those guys, but unlike those guys who turn out a fucking Switch 2, Switch Pro video every about 5 times a day, I like to ground my predictions in actual macroeconomic analysis. And so my thoughts were as follows. Number one, the battery tech is bottleneck, hasn't gotten caught up, and it's hard to do more power if you have a battery tech bottleneck. So there's that. There's also the fact that we are going into the worst macroeconomic global market conditions in 20 years. And it's a really bad time to launch a console. It's an absolutely terrible time to launch new hardware. The only time that probably could have rivaled is when Sony and Microsoft decided to fucking stupidly launch their console. So let it not be said that it can't be done. But Nintendo tends to be a little more conservative with when they launch these consoles. So the reason I switched that out, I said the whole time, what I'm waiting on is I want to see what this earnings call says, because essentially my thoughts were that there were 2 games that, if they were strong, this was early 2023 before Tears of the Kingdom came out. I said Tears of the Kingdom's getting ready to drop. I didn't even know about Mario Wonder, but we had a 2D Mario game, and if you're not familiar with the historical power of 2D Mario to sell systems, go familiarize yourself with it. I don't have time tonight. And Legend of Zelda, which only recently has become a system selling phenomenon. So I argued that if those games were good, and if they did their job, we could expect just those 2 games, no matter what Nintendo has on the shelf this year, will carry Nintendo for another year to maybe give the macroeconomic conditions time to stabilize, because I think they'll be a little bit more stable by 2025. Because we're going to be wrapping up some things that are happening on the globe right now that aren't really great. Now they could get worse, and in which case, but I do think some of that stuff's going to stabilize by around 2025 in my own analysis. The problem is, if you look at the sales of Mario Wonder, and if you look at the sales of Tears of the Kingdom, they didn't do their job. Now, people are gonna now the moron brigade that was parading into that chat, basically the nin nobodies decided to come in and lecture me on macroeconomic analysis, because they're licensed to do that. They're on Twitter. Came in and told me that, well, what do you mean, Sue? What do you mean, moron? What are you talking about? What are we talking about? Almost 20 million copies for Tears of the Kingdom. Almost 12 million for Mario Wonder. What you talking about? Fastest selling. So you had that bunch of morons that streamed in. What I mean is, look at the sales over time. When did Zelda Tears of the Kingdom do a vast majority of its sales, and who did those sales happen to? You will notice there wasn't a really big hardware spike at the time that Tears of the Kingdom came out. It was selling to people who already bought the Switch, who had already decided to buy Tears of the Kingdom. That's who bought Tears of the Kingdom. Now, there were systems that sold, and we actually are doing well for hardware, but that needed to trickle into the next year and be evergreen, just like Zelda Breath of the Wild was. Same with Mario Wonder. So, yeah, 12 million. Well, that's the fastest selling Mario ever. Yeah, gee, thanks for that, genius. I would fucking hope it is. I hope it's the fastest selling game ever. It's 2024. There's been 14 years of population growth since the last fucking game. I sure hope it's selling better.
And let's look culturally how things have shifted from when I was a kid and Mario first came out. When the original NES came out, I guarantee that it didn't have the same sort of high amount of sales as compared to now, because the NES very clearly was marketed as a toy. And who plays with toys? Children. Now you have us kids who grew up with these games, who still play these video games and have taught our children to play them. So now you've got our generation and 2 generations before too.
Yeah, it's a warm market. It's a fucking warm market versus a cold market. You had a giant fucking iron curtain that literally forbid Eastern Europe from buying Nintendo's products. You had China with its first console ban, which lasted from 1981 all the way through until 1993. And then they had another console ban that hit the Wii that was from 2003 to 2012. So you couldn't buy consoles in China. Couldn't buy consoles in Eastern Europe. You had nobody knew what the fuck a Mario was. Nobody knew what the fuck a Zelda was back then. You had 40 years of fucking population growth from now until then. So what I'm trying to tell these morons is these smooth-brained idiots, these brainlets. What I'm trying to tell them is that if you do all of the macroeconomic analyses, aside from competition, there's more competition in the game for games now than there was in those eras. So that goes against Mario Brothers and Mario Brothers 3 and Mario World. Less Mario World, but certainly there was no competition for Mario Brothers and Mario Brothers 3. None. Mario 2. There was a cartridge shortage. So you could actually argue that those sales were depressed then, because a lot of those games didn't even get a second run until the end of the NES's life due to the cartridge shortage in 1988. There's so many different factors that, yeah, I can look at 12 million on a 2D Mario game that averages 30 to 40 million across its lifetime on average. And I can say that a game that sold 4.5 million copies its first week, and then only went on to sell 8 million more copies, not even, through the holiday period, with a suspicious hardware attach rate that doesn't look the greatest. Yeah, I'm going to say that game didn't do its job, and it certainly isn't going to do its fucking job now. It's 5th and 6th and 7th and 8th and 14th on all the charts now. Like, I don't know, unless I'm missing something. And OJ says I am. OJ says if you go to Amazon, it's still charting number 1 on Amazon. So OJ makes some good points about that because OJ's a smart person, unlike these fucking dipshits that fucking paraded in that thread. So OJ did bring up some good counterpoints. But in general, what I'm saying is I don't see Tears of the Kingdom and Wonder as being sufficiently strong enough to carry the Switch on its back for an entire new year. I don't. And because
And
it
the
can't
question,
do that, I don't think we're getting a Switch 2 in 2025. I think the investors are going to get antsy. I think we're getting it in 2024 now.
yeah, and the idea that the Super Mario Brothers Wonder is going to continue that same meteoric rise over a long period is foolish at best. Like you're there will be tapering, like you had said, it's going to taper off, and it is mostly like a single player experience. Yeah, there's some online modes, but it's Dark Souls like in nature. It's not anything that's great. And then the multiplayer is in house, so it's something that's not going to be like a continued sustaining experience. So you can't imagine it's just going to continue that rise. It's going to taper off, and I don't know if I see it beating new Super Mario Brothers U Deluxe. I sure hope
Which,
it
by the
does,
way,
because
I sure hope so too. Because you want to talk about fucking embarrassing. Whoa.
like new Super Mario Brothers U Deluxe is not what I would say a top 10 2D Mario game, in my opinion. My opinion. And it's still the highest 2D Mario game on the total sales of the Switch.
Yeah, 100%. And I hope that changes because, yeah, definitely. So, how many Mario Wonder copies are going to sell over a year? I'd have to do a little bit of an analysis and see what the drop off is, but the drop off was significant. It did 4.5 million its first week, so it did 1/3 of its entire sales its first week or two. Then you had the holiday, and you would expect the holiday to blow that out of the fucking water. And it didn't. From the time now, it's only done 11.9 million, which is very good. I kept hearing the word, yeah, definitely not a flop. I never said it was a flop, Captain Dipshit.
Oh no.
I never said it was a flop. No, those are phenomenal numbers for anything but a historical comparison against other 2D Mario games. That's why I get worried. I get worried because I just don't see this game having the legs, and for the reasons I've stated all fucking podcast long. But they
And
don't.
I
They
think
don't. Oh,
the
go
only
ahead.
other reason I think it could have legs is because Nintendo's the Super Switch is going to be backwards compatible, and it's meant to sustain the 2D Mario drive through that next console too. That'd be my only additional guess on that.
Well, and what I would argue then is that's cheating because you have to use the system of origin for these kind of analyses. So you can't compare. It's kind of like New Super Mario Brothers U. Yeah, it's selling great on the Switch, but yeah, it'll always be a 5 million seller to me because that's its system of origin. That was its
Or like
true
playing
footprint. Yeah, that was its true footprint for selling the console because the job of 2D Mario is to sell the console it's on, and
or
it didn't
playing
do
the
shit.
PS4 games on your PS5. It's kind of the same thing. PS4 game sales might have a bump in sales because now you have a new console that's out that, oh hey, now I can play the PS4 games, because that was a real thing where there are individuals who had just gotten the Switch and never had the PS4, and now they have the ability to get the PS5, and now the near entirety of the PS4 library is open to them. So that's a little bit of a bump.
Yeah, 100%. And here's another thing. So here's Rush Dog saying 2D Mario games traditionally have legs, but there's nothing amazing about its initial sales, especially when you consider the massive install base and holiday season. That's what I'm saying. Second comment by
Mm-hmm.
Rush. Based on the sales numbers, nobody got Tears of the Kingdom for Christmas. Tears of the Kingdom hit a fucking brick wall after its first month on the market. Hit a fucking brick wall.
Yeah,
Absolute
and I
brick
mean,
wall. And by the way, just want to say, I know OJ's live right now, but hey, OJ, buddy, I called it. I told you that game was doing some weird, dumb shit that wasn't going to translate to the fans of Breath of the Wild. And I told you that it would sell strong at first, and then there would be backlash. And there was. So I just want to throw that out there. God, I wish we had time to expand on that thought, because I can tell you everything that was wrong with Tears of the Kingdom and why it did not translate to the same um, evergreen status that a game like Breath of the Wild had, and will not. I'll make it, and will not, by the way. That game made the game had a lot of mistakes. The game made a lot of mistakes. But what do you think, Fox?
So it's funny. Breath of the Wild will still maintain and be the the number 2 spot. I don't. This is a hot take salad. I consider Tears of the Kingdom part of Breath of the Wild. I don't even think of it as, yes, obviously it's a separate game, but it just feels like an extension of Breath of the Wild. That's literally what it is.
It's second quest.
And it's like it's what it literally was designed to be. DLC. Let's make more DLC, and then let's make a game, and then let's spend more time developing this than the difference between the time of Skyward Sword and Breath of the Wild.
I think
that.
Yeah, I think Nintendo would have been much better off, and I told them to do this initially. I would have been better off. Make the game in the same world, just like you did. Make the temples different. Make Ganon coming back different. Same world, and here's the kicker. Same time as Breath of the Wild, and make it a second quest. It ties in historically with the original Legend of Zelda, just like Zelda had the second quest. Just make it a second quest set in the same time, but instead of Calamity Ganon, we have Man Ganon.
And yeah, it's like Ganondorf, how Tears had it.
Yeah, exactly. So instead of the Calamity, you have Ganon. You have just Ganondorf. Yeah.
So yeah, see, for me, I like Tears was the bigger world because it essentially was 4 worlds versus Breath just being 1. But it's like, and I did feel the story was better in Tears.
Yeah.
And the ingenuity and the stuff that you could do was a little bit more expanded upon.
But
in
did
Tears.
it? Well, yeah, but did it fit Zelda's motif? Did it fit Zelda's world? And I will argue, what is Legend of Zelda? Zelda is is a dark fantasy knight in Celtic Wonderland. That is what Zelda is in gameplay form. So it's things like Sleeping Beauty, The Sword in the Stone, Lord of the Rings to some extent. It's that dark fantasy mythos. Taking magical techno powers and gluing pieces of shit together takes away from that night in Celtic Wonderland to me. It really takes away from that. It felt very weird. I literally made a joke 10 years ago about Link the Builder, Bob the Builder, like Legend of Zelda Bob the Builder edition. Like that'll be the next weird thing Anuma does, and I'll be damned if it did not fucking end up. I swear to God, I made that joke like a decade ago. Like after Skyward Sword, I said, "Oh, Bob the Builder, Link next."
It's almost like the leap from the NES and SNES Final Fantasies to Final Fantasy VII. You went from these high fantasy worlds to all of a sudden it's like this modern day sort of thing, and it's almost a culture shock.
Yeah, the only thing that saved Final Fantasy is that it always kind of had those mythological elements, those futurist elements. Like even back then, there were airships, and you had like the mechs in Final Fantasy 1. And so it always had that kind of hodgepodge because it was kind of a lot of those games actually were based on ancient like Persian and Indian mythology. A lot of the stuff comes from that, which is kind of interesting, and they have a lot of future stuff in a lot of their texts as well. And so I think that kind of saves it. But we're at 9 a.m. Again, we'll definitely have to do a second round on this because again we could go another 3 hours. I promise you. Before we go, I always like to give the guest a chance and an opportunity to see if there's anything you want to ask me, pick my brain on, since I've been interviewing you this whole time. So you have any questions for me before we go?
Metroid, what is the best, the favorite, the masterpiece? I got to know, what do you think is the best Metroid game?
It's Dread now. Yeah, it's Metroid Dread now. That's easy. Before I would have actually said, and it's a very hot take, I would have said actually OG Metroid,
The NES one.
NES one. I would have said
So,
prior to this.
what are your thoughts about people who feel that has not aged well?
Play it again. Play it again and throw your bitchy inhibitions aside and get a map to draw your thing and play it like it was meant to be played. Metroid was that hardcore gamer experience that the NES needed. It was the Defender 2 arcade cabinet. It wasn't fucking Donkey Kong and Pac-Man. It was that smoke-filled corner of the arcade where the pros were fucking gathered around playing Defender 2. It was the Defender 2 cabinet of the NES. And that's how Metroid is meant to be played. And the reason why I love Metroid 1 OG, the reason I love that fucking game is because it did a unique job and it was hard. It was the last time Metroid was hard that I played until Dread. Super Metroid, I can
Oh
play in
my
my
god,
fucking sleep. It's easy.
Dread. I'm going to agree with you there. Dread, the hardest in battle in a Metroid game, and I've played them all, is the last boss in Dread. I've never had such a difficult
so tough
boss.
Well, it brings the pain. It brings the pain.
It does.
And Metroid is supposed to do that.
And Samus has never controlled better. Never controlled better than
like butter.
Yep.
Like butter. Now you want to ask me what the worst Metroid is? Do you even have to?
Oh boy. Yeah, I'm gonna have to.
It's Other M.
Fair.
No
Very
argument.
fair.
See that, chat? No fucking argument. Ever.
Very fair.
And there never will be. There never will be.
And it's canonical. It's canon. And I hate it.
No, it is not. No, it is not. Canon is I'm the goddamn customer. Canon is what I say it is.
but you play Dread. It references Other M in the gallery and in the story.
I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know. You can take Bimbo Samus and her fucking daddy issues and her fucking mommy complex, and you can suck my ass.
Fuck, like she is one of my top 5 favorite video game characters.
Yeah, how'd you like her getting turned into a fucking brat with daddy issues?
Oh my, and like being placed in like this whole mother theme and everything like that throughout that whole freaking game.
You can thank Yoshio Sakamoto. You can thank him for that.
I don't want to.
Yep.
I don't want to.
You can thank Sakamoto for that. That's what you get. That's what you get without Shigeru Miyamoto, because he was the producer on the Prime games, and without Gunpei Yokoi. That's what you fucking get. You get this weird obsession with this baby Metroid. And I've made this argument all the time, Fox. It's like, oh, but she had a motherly take on. No, she didn't. Fucking Samus literally genocided that entire goddamn species and then dropped
that was her freaking mission in that game.
And then
dropped
the little motherfucker off at a Federation lab to be dissected and used for energy and batteries.
Because she cares about the Federation and bettering the universe, and what better way than to what is driving the Metroids to do what it does?
Well, she cares.
Let's turn it in.
Yeah, she cares about money, but through that, she cares about the Federation.
Right, and like
she's a bounty hunter. She's fucking Boba
Fett. Yep. Like she tried to be in the Galactic Federation, but she wasn't going to be bossed around. Like that's not her thing. She prefers to work alone, as evidenced by the fantastic gameplay. Okay, I realize that we're getting beyond our time, but I had to ask. I had to get your Metroid view. That was important to me.
We'll do a whole segment on Metroid next time you're on, because there's a lot to unpack with Metroid. But Metroid's a very important franchise. By the way, I still worry that Sakamoto's killed it. I don't necessarily know that it's recovered. 3 million on the Switch's install base, still kind of rough.
Yeah, that worries me.
Not gonna lie,
worries me.
I still think the man killed it, despite Mercury Stream's incredible efforts. I still think I think it's a zombie still.
And like you had tweeted, Pikmin 4 was over 3 million, and that's good for Pikmin, but that's to Metroid. That's Metroid Dread numbers right there.
Uh-huh.
That's not anything that's
Yep, that's it's not good. It's not good. So, all right. Well, that being said, yeah, I don't want to keep you too long here because again, we had an agreed upon hard stop on this, which we're 6 minutes past. So, I'll ask you one final question here, and that is, hey, Fox, did you have fun?
absolutely. And thank you so much for having me, Zoo. And you of course can find and check me out at YouTube at InfernoFox Gaming for RPGs, Nintendo, and retro gaming content. Thank you again for the invite. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah, and definitely check his channel out, guys. I'm not kidding. Again, when I say Ludology, this is one of those few guys that actually dives into Ludology. He actually dives into how these games work, what makes them successful, and why we gravitate toward them and form cultures around them. Like, it's genuinely good content. I guess we'll end by I just want to read these last few comments. Keithia says, I would have liked Corrupted Shrines. Corrupted Shrines would have been cool. That's actually a good idea, Keithias. Mandy, how's it coming? Thanks for stopping in. This one had a little bit of a hard stop, but I'm glad to see you came in here. And then Rush Dog also wishing Mandy hi, but came in just in time to hear not hot takes at all on Metroid and for us to go ahead and exit. But thanks so much. Thanks for coming on. Thanks everybody so much for coming out to another Liquored Up Live. We're gonna go ahead. I'm gonna go ahead and end the stream now. If you want to stay on for a little bit of a denouement, we can talk a little bit longer after, real quick, and just do a quick exit interview. And I'm gonna see everybody later. Love you guys all. Now get out of here.
Thanks, guys.